So I'm standing in the rain just outside Stansted Airport. I've travelled British Airways through Heathrow, I've travelled easyJet through Gatwick, and now it's time to see what Ryanair's service is like through London Stansted during these difficult times. I'll be travelling with them today to Cologne in Germany, one of only a handful of countries that is still open to tourists without quarantine on the way in and without quarantine on the way back. Cologne is one of the few cities that Ryanair currently services on consecutive days, meaning I only have to spend one night overseas. So come with me and let's see what happens.
Hi, I'm Matt. Over the last 25 years, I've travelled a lot. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.3 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. But I'm nowhere near done. So hit subscribe to see where I go next and perhaps get some inspiration for your next trip.
Once again, it made most sense to drive to the airport. 93 miles this time, which means Stansted is almost exactly the same distance from my home as Heathrow. I think I prefer the drive to Stansted though, as there's less M25 to navigate, and the part you do use is generally less congested, even if you have to use the Dartford crossing. I looked at taking a train, although spending over £140 to get to and from my £25 flight didn't feel like good value. Parking directly at Stansted would have cost around £70, which for a 20-hour stay is beyond outrageous. The airport even charges you £5 to drive up to the terminal to drop someone off, which is also pretty outrageous, but is a revenue earner for them that Gatwick will shortly start to copy. So I found an off-site parking option with Maple Parking, which still cost around £40 for an overnight stay, but that felt like a bargain in comparison. They're not exempt from the £5 airport access fee, so if you're the only person in the bus, then 25% of the price you're paying Maple is going to Stansted. A short minibus transfer got me to the terminal. Stansted's terminal fits into the giant boxy shed school of architecture and is fairly dull. A high proportion of travellers are irregular leisure travellers, so the place has a reputation for being a bit of a nightmare to traverse. But in current times, with only 34 more flights scheduled to depart that day, compared to the normal 500 or more, it was a breeze. Ryanair had thoughtfully given me the opportunity to buy fast-track security access for the suspiciously low price of £3.50, which would have been a waste of money that day, but which could represent excellent value if that pricing holds when things return to normal. I suspect the low price reflects the reduced value of the option right now. Through security and, you guessed it, into the duty-free. Decent value actually, from what I glimpsed. Stansted takes the post-security experience to a different level though, as once clear of the duty-free, you then have to pass lots of other retail and F&B outlets before finding anywhere comfortable to sit. I say comfortable, but the airport obviously wants you spending in the bars and restaurants rather than just sitting, as the seats aren't that great and there's nowhere near enough of them for when the terminal is busy. There are at least a few options of places to eat, all of which are likely to have a better offering than the plane you're about to board. There was one lounge open in the terminal, the Escape Lounge, tucked away down a fairly uninspiring corridor on the way to the toilets. £20 would have got me in, as would membership of a premium tier of the Priority Pass scheme. The number 1 lounge was closed. The gate arrangement at Stansted is a bit higgledy-piggledy. Some are accessible via a tram, while others are reached via a fairly lengthy walk up and down and round and about. Stansted seemed to have done quite a lot to mitigate the pandemic. There were a number of hand sanitising stations, regular announcements, and lots of signs. So good work there. Although look out for my upcoming video on my return flight, which, spoiler alert, will show that things weren't quite so well organised on my arrival back. So, on to Ryanair. Ryanair does the low-cost flight thing very, very well. Even if that means that processes are designed to benefit Ryanair rather than the passenger. This can really annoy people accustomed to a more customer-centric experience, and I think that drives a lot of the negativity that circulates about the airline. In my admittedly limited experience of Ryanair, their passengers seem quite content to inconvenience themselves if it means they can access a cheap and efficient service. Case in point is boarding. As Ryanair is so focused on minimising turnaround times, they commence boarding well ahead of time, often ahead of the plane even being there. They then buffer screened passengers on the air bridge, often for some time. In hindsight, I was a little too eager to board, so joined the queue quite promptly and ended up standing in a chilly air bridge for 12 minutes before we finally boarded. Probably not a great example of how to socially distance your passengers either, worsened as there were no announcements or warnings or reminders to space ourselves out. Another example of Ryanair's focused on cost and efficiency is that they have their planes customised so as to have stairs built into the front doors. This speeds up the process and avoids the need to rent stairs at airports they visit, even if the stairs end up being a little steeper than you might be used to. Entry through the rear doors was provided by regular airport-supplied stairs. Another example of Ryanair's lack of focus on the pandemic was that this boarding method makes absolutely no effort to stream passengers on board in row order, so there was lots and lots of passenger crossover inside the cabin. So, to the seat. Perhaps unexpectedly, given everything I've said, Ryanair offers 30 inches of legroom, 1 inch more than BA or easyJet, which was plenty for a flight of that length, and would be plenty for longer flights too. Once again, I had an empty seat next to me. There was a table, but nothing else. No seat pockets, so the safety card is glued to the seat in front, but it reduces the plane's weight, as does the removal of any recline function to the seats, which also eliminates the chances of passengers thumping each other when they ignore established recline etiquette. As you might expect, no in-seat power and no Wi-Fi. All things which annoy frequenters of full-service airlines, but things which keep the fares down. My flight cost £12.95 each way, which is about $17 US. Considering Ryanair pays the government £13 in air passenger duty for every passenger, the flight itself was nowhere near break-even for them, considering fuel, terminal and other direct variable costs. So any money they make comes from add-ons. I managed my own boarding pass, had an overnight bag that fit under the seat in front, so avoided those fees. I also have the right combination of thriftiness and willpower to abstain from F&B purchases on a 3 or 4 hour flight, so the 54-minute hop to Cologne was no problem. Ryanair usually also sells scratch cards, and did so on my return flight, but this revenue source was absent from this flight. I did, however, pay £9 for a forward window seat to enhance this video experience for you, dear viewer. Always nice to have an engine in shot. Our flight took us out of the UK overhead Essex into Belgium just east of Dunkirk before descending overhead Liège and Aachen, landing into Cologne Bonn airport towards the southeast. Our plane was a Boeing 737-800 series delivered to Ryanair 4 years ago, which was transferred to its joint venture Malta Air earlier this year. There was a trolley service during the flight, but I was more interested in the excellent views from the window. Great views of Kent, Dunkirk and Cologne. No toilet review on this flight, but we all know what an airline toilet looks like by now. There were 3 for the 159 passengers, 1 in the front and 2 up the back. After landing, another pandemic black mark for Ryanair. No attempt was made to control passengers explaining, which I have to say was poor and a real contrast to the other airlines I'd recently flown. Down the ladder, across the tarmac and into the terminal. Once again, no great effort was made to enforce social distancing at the immigration counters, but passengers were generally respectful of each other's space and the line moved quickly. I'd completed a German passenger locator form, but I was never entirely clear that I needed one, and no one checked that I had. At the time of my visit, certain German regions were requiring certain additional measures be taken by passengers from certain UK regions. So 3 certains creates a whole lot of uncertainty, not unlike the current situation in the UK, some might say. As my flight originated from a low-risk part of the UK, I assume that the authorities assumed that we were all okay and that anyone who was from a high-risk region would self-declare that fact and would act accordingly. All quite unsatisfactory and very confusing, to be honest. Over to me.
So there you go, Ryanair. I may need VoiceOver Guy to help me with this because I'm not sure I've processed all my thoughts yet. We landed, and unlike the other airlines I've been on, there were no announcements helping us to get off the plane. Instead, it was an old-fashioned, everyone up, everybody off. Last person in the terminal buys the drinks kind of scrum. Took me back to the good old days before all of this. A good flight. Ryanair knows what it's doing when it comes to intra-European short-haul economy flights, and they do it quite well. Whether it's the safest experience, I'm not sure, but I'm here safely and I'm looking forward to a night in Cologne. So thanks for watching, and if the VoiceOver Guy doesn't have anything to add, I'll see you all in the next video.
All I will add is invite you to like the click button, and new to the channel if you're subscribed, and comment me a leave too. I'd love to hear from you, or something like that. So it's goodbye from him, and it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.